Every day in Iraq, up to 100 mutilated bodies are found. They're not killed by Sunni insurgents. They're mostly killed by Shia death squads who are ethnically cleansing Baghdad in a systematic campaign. What am I seeing? Drill. These are electric drill holes. Many of the killers are actually policemen. Behind them, senior religious and political figures stand accused. So he said he didn't know what was happening on the 6th floor of his own ministry.
No, of course.
Did you believe that?
No.
Those accused of supporting this daily carnage are the same people America has put in power to shape the future of Iraq. From our hotel in Baghdad, we can see the Ministry of the Interior. Most Iraqis are terrified of the place. Every local cameraman we asked said if they tried to film, they'd be shot. That's because it's the headquarters of the police commando units. Many officers are loyal, not to Iraq's new democratic government, but to various Shia militia groups. A vicious sectarian war is going on for control of the capital. The Americans don't rule the streets, the militia groups do, with the help of the police. They're kidnapping, killing, and also running a network of secret prisons. We fixed this morning to go and speak to an Iraqi member of parliament. He was part of a delegation a few months ago that made an unannounced visit on a prison that was being run by one of the police commando units, and he actually filmed what he found there. We're meeting him in the Green Zone, once the busy heart of Baghdad, now a safe but sterile area reserved for politicians and the military. It's a total contrast to the mayhem most people suffer beyond the blast-proof concrete walls. The MP we're going to meet is Sunni. He's totally opposed to the American occupation and normally hostile to Western journalists. But Shia policemen torturing Sunnis in secret prisons is a story he wants exposed. These pictures haven't been seen in the West before. In June, Mohammed al-Daini and other MPs turned up unannounced at one of Saddam's old prisons, which should have been closed. But the police had taken it over unofficially. Inside, they found several hundred men, all Sunnis. Almost none of them had ever been charged with any crime.
The prisoners said most of them had been jailed on the basis of false accusations. They said at least 70 inmates had been sexually abused.
One man is desperate to speak. He says he's an imam at a mosque. He tells al-Daini he confessed to a murder he knew nothing about.
The reason he confessed was to save his family, who were brought in front of him. He was told to choose between confessing to murder or seeing his family raped. Despite the fact he confessed, this man was still himself raped twice.
The men begin to show him how they've been tortured. Eventually, they wait patiently so their injuries can be methodically logged. Fingernails ripped out. Burns. Beatings. The minister in charge of the police for the previous year was Bayan Jabbar, who's a Shia Muslim.
This started when Jabba was Minister of the Interior. He's been involved in many human rights breaches. There's a great deal of evidence against him, and he should be handed over to the International Court as a war criminal.
This is only one of several secret prisons discovered in the last 18 months, all run by the ministry's police commandos. Three days after exposing this illegal prison last summer, 10 of Mohammed al-Daini's relatives came to see him.
My young cousins came to visit me in Baghdad. When they left, their route out of the capital was under the control of the security forces. Despite this, they were kidnapped from their bus and driven away by armed men in military and police uniforms.
The next time he saw his cousins, all 10 had been shot. Their bodies dumped on the street. Leaflets scattered round say congratulations to those who killed these Sunni extremists.
"48 hours later, I discovered that my cousin's killers were militiamen who were operating as death squads inside the police and the army. The attack had been ordered by those people who'd been exposed by my investigation of the Diyala prison case.
The massacre of his family hasn't silenced him, exactly the opposite. He told us he had proof of other crimes committed by the police while Jabba was Interior Minister. He's got a lot more documents and tapes in his office. His office is outside the green zone. It's a risk to get there. It's a risk I'm going to take because I think this is important. So it's only about 500 yards outside the green zone, and we're going to go with him in a blacked out van and an armed convoy because I want to get these documents and these tapes. A Sunni MP, Mohammed al-Daini, is taking us to his office to show us evidence of how the police are acting as death squads. 2 of his armed guards are in the car, but another 50 are waiting as we leave the safety of the green zone. A dozen cars, 4 armed men in each, 2 pickup trucks with mounted machine guns. This is what it takes to be a member of Iraq's new democracy. We pass the people they wanted picked up, some of whom are later found dead. And this is their confession, or is this the report of the investigation?
This is the report of the investigation.
Okay. The report also says the senior officers who ordered the kidnapping belong to a Shia militia group called the Badr Brigade, and that's the military wing of Bayan Jabba's own political party. We will copy it and I will give it to you to get back to him, okay? Thank you. Do you want me to kit up again, or you do? Okay. With the armed guards in the back, we leave the compound. Mohammed al-Daini comes too, our personal guarantor in case we're stopped by Sunni insurgents.
هذا جينا بطريق رجعنا بطريق مو نفس اللي جينا به موضوع الحماية.
This is a different way.
We're going back a different way.
دقيقة بس دقيقة.
He says another 50 armed men we can't see are blocking off the side roads to protect our route. A roadblock and police in camouflage uniforms.
يعني لا يظل عندكم شك شيء. أخوي أنا محمد دايني عضو مجلس النواب العراقي. مرحبا أخي. هلا.
Who are these guys?
Megawir.
These were Megawir. That's the name for the police commandos, the force running the secret prisons and kidnapping people to order. We're driving right past one of their headquarters.
كثير من العراقيين في زمن صالح.
In this place, there were many Iraqis who were murdered or raped during Salah era.
We're heading back to our hotel inside the green zone. Will you say thank you to his guys who've looked after us as well?
شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you. شكرا جزيلا.
شكرا لحمامتك.
The Al Rashid used to be the poshest hotel in Baghdad. It took a battering during the American invasion. But at least there's electricity, unlike most Iraqi homes, and it's a safe place to hear more evidence about Bayan Jabbar's time as minister. The only place that we can talk to you on. Ada Usairin was a human rights minister in the last government. Her team kept bringing her reports of torture inside the Interior Ministry itself.
So I didn't believe them because it's a ministry that belongs to the government and the Interior Minister has to know about it. So not the second time, the third time, I said, can I come with you?
Inside, she found dozens of people being abused. The story of one woman horrified her above all others.
She told me that she was raped 3 times in the same building.
Do you think it happened?
Yes, I did. Because she was crying, weeping. She was not acting. And she was still there for 3 weeks. Why was she still there?
And the people who she said were raping her, who were they?
They are the policemen and the security people who were in the Interior Ministry.
Ada Usairin lived in exile in Britain for over 20 years after Saddam murdered her son. She calls herself a secular liberal Democrat, totally opposed to religion in politics. She confronted Bayan Jabbar about the abuse in his ministry, and he said he'd sort it out. Was the suggestion that he was saying, I admit this is happening, but it's just a few bad people in my ministry?
No, he didn't mention that word, that I admit that this is happening. No, he apologized for what happened, and he said, I don't know about it. I heard from I read your report, and I will look after what's happening.
So he said he didn't know what was happening on the 6th floor of his own ministry?
No, of course, yes.
Did you believe that?
No.
But Iraqis aren't the only ones concerned about Bayan Jabbar. We've also tracked down a number of other people who worked in Iraq and witnessed the growth of the death squads. 2 years ago, Bayan Jabbar's first job in government was Minister of Housing and Construction, and Mike Karam was his senior American advisor.
He was articulate, he was well-groomed, well-dressed, meticulously dressed, spoke English when he wanted to. And he was surrounded by these group of men that were his own private bodyguards. And there were hundreds of them. They were dressed in black, a black shirt, black pants, shoes, but they were all armed.
So this was almost like a private army?
It was a private army.
This is the housing ministry, and Mike Karam says the new minister soon made his presence felt.
He went in there and did a cleansing, and the people who had been Sunnis, people of other religions, they pushed them out. And we noticed this movement of bringing Shia into the main positions within the ministry. Everybody did.
Bayan Jabbar spent years in exile in Iran, which funded both the party he belonged to and its military wing, the Badr Brigade. Their common aim was to overthrow Saddam and his Sunni government, until the Americans did it for them. Rick Clay was another advisor to the new minister.
This was a very powerful position to have. Roads, bridges, hospitals, palaces, mosques. Everything is designed and built, and military bases are all built out of the Ministry of Housing and Construction.
But corruption was a huge problem. The Grand Mosque, which Saddam had started, was one of several projects where millions of dollars worth of materials and equipment were going missing, while the ministry guards did nothing.
And it wasn't at nighttime, it was in broad daylight. It wasn't mom and pop with a screwdriver and a pair of pliers. This was very well organized. Everything was documented about the corruption, about the theft of equipment, about our suspicions that he was taking the Ministry of Housing and turning it into a Shia operation with these battered forces.
Mike and Rick put together a damning report about Jabba's ministry for their own American bosses. They wanted him replaced, but instead, they were the ones who were sacked.
What happened was quite a bit of a shock when we got there. When we got there, they decided that Mike and I needed to be replaced, they saw it as being ineffective in dealing with the minister. They decided they were going to keep him, and it was probably more politically expedient to ship us out at that particular time.
Mike and Rick didn't talk about what happened for over 2 years, but after Bayan Jabba was promoted to Interior Minister and reports grew about death squads, they became too angry to keep quiet.
Every time I see him on TV, it gnaws at my very soul. I've talked to so many people in Department of State, in DOD, the intelligence communities that have dealt with this man, and they feel the same way. This man should not be there.
They knew that the guy was doing all this. Now, they may not have liked what I said, they may not have liked me, but how in the hell do you keep him? And you let him continue till now we're at the point of a civil war.
Baghdad certainly feels like a city being ripped apart by civil war. In the last year, the pattern of killing has changed. The Sunni insurgents continue to attack the Americans and anyone cooperating with them. But much of the violence now is sectarian and comes from the Shia militia groups with police backing. To reach their victims, we're working with an Iraqi journalist who has to be anonymous for his own safety. Abdullah's been living in London for the last few months and barely recognises his own city.
This is the Mosul district. It looks like Oxford Street in London. It used to be very, very crowded of people who came to the restaurant, do shopping, and like these things. Everywhere there is a lorry or a vehicle carrying a family. This vehicle is carrying the furniture of a family, hopefully also from the violence. During in the Sunni district, we find most of the roads are closed by the people to protect themselves.
Abdullah's heading to a district called Hurriya, one of the areas worst hit by sectarian violence. He's come to meet a well-known Sunni family. A video of Sheikh Kadem Sahid in happier times. One of the Sheikh's 5 sons was getting married. Although they're Sunni, this is a mixed area, and many of the friends and neighbours they'd invited were Shia. This was March 2002, a year before the invasion. And they're home now, after dozens of uniformed men burst in. This is now a house of 6 widows.
What have we done to deserve this? They killed all the men and left all the women. I've no one to complain to but God.
It happened last November. Even the youngest children remember it clearly. Haneen was asleep in her parents' bed.
I heard a gunshot, so I cuddled my dad. Then they came into our room and they shot Daddy. I told them not to kill my father, but the man told me to shut up and threatened to shoot me. Then he went and shot my uncle.
5 men died that night. Another son, the groom in the wedding video, was killed 3 weeks earlier. After a year, the 6 widows still won't go into the bedrooms, so a child takes Abdullah. Mustafa knows where every bullet hole is in every bedroom. A neighbour filmed this within hours of the killings. A family overwhelmed by rage and grief, the scale of the tragedy too great to understand. The neighbours said that night they'd seen police cars parked outside. One of the Sheikh's sons was a policeman and he recognised the gunmen as fellow officers.
The man went back in and shot my husband in the neck. Before they shot him, he told them he was a policeman like them. He said, "I am with you. I am with you." But they just shot him in the stomach.
The massacre of a prominent Sunni family sent shockwaves through the neighbourhood. Perhaps it was meant to. There was strong evidence that the killers were police commandos.
هؤلاء الأبرياء جاءوهم ليلا في الساعة 4 ليلا بملابس قوات الداخلية أو مغاوير الداخلية فقتلوهم. حاولوا اعتقالهم فلم يستطيعوا فقتلوهم.
The police commandos blamed for these murders are the units which have been most heavily infiltrated by Shia militia groups. The most active has been the Badr Brigade, the military wing of Bayan Jabbar's own political party. When he became Interior Minister last year, a senior American policeman was one of his advisors.
One order that the minister had signed was authorizing the hiring of 1,300 people directly into a commando unit. And without any police training, without any background checks, it was just wholesale recruitment. And we suspected it was just one of the units within the Badr organization being put on the payroll of the Ministry of Interior.
So this was like a ready-made unit being imported up and dropped in on Baghdad?
Changing uniforms, and from the Badr Brigade organization to special police units.
Last year, as more militiamen were recruited, more bodies began turning up, often wearing police handcuffs, and usually in the same places every day. So Jerry Burke wanted to set up a surveillance operation to catch the killers.
Well, we talked to the Iraqi police, particularly the Major Crimes Unit, which would have been the unit to investigate murders, or Internal Affairs if there was some suspicion that they were special police organizations. And both of these organizations were very reluctant, in fact refused to investigate these sites. They believed that the suspects, the perpetrators, were members of the special police and were more heavily armed and would have killed members of the Major Crimes Unit or Internal Affairs in retaliation for investigating it.
So the ordinary police were too frightened?
Major Crimes and Internal Affairs were regular police, career police officers, and they did not want to investigate what they thought were militia elements working in the special police.
If the special commandos were to blame, it was politically explosive, because they were under the direct control of the minister.
Bayan Jabbar's job should have been to prevent or investigate, and there was no evidence that he did either of that.
So what conclusion do you draw from that?
That he was at least tacitly approving what was going on, at least.
We wrote to Bayan Jabbar about these allegations. He's now the finance minister, but he didn't reply. He's always denied all knowledge of the death squads and blamed rogue officers. The United Nations have brought me to their compound because every 2 months they do a report on the state of human rights in Iraq, and the latest one's just come out and it's grim reading. It shows that in July and August 6,500 civilians were killed violently, and particularly in July the figure's over 3,500. That's the highest figure for any 1 month, and the UN are describing the level of violence as unprecedented.
We get a lot of reports from our contacts and from the victims of human rights violations that there are links between the militias and the police, that there are links between the militias and Ministry of Interior or other ministries. Those are individuals that commit crimes every day and with a large degree of impunity, meaning nothing happens. There is not, at the present time, a way to really stop the course, this vicious circle of violence and counter-violence, bring to justice those who commit crimes, especially if they are from within militias.
When you raise this with the ministries responsible, what reaction do you get?
I think this government is very forthcoming with respect to the needs to give priority to the promotion and protection of human rights. I think the reality, unfortunately, is another thing.
This is the reality, Baghdad morgue, where victims of every kind of violence are brought until the families collect the bodies for burial. A Shia militia called the Mahdi Army control everything. Their gunmen stood behind the local cameraman the whole time. All the men he saw here were Shia. The only Sunnis were women. If their men come, they're threatened and sometimes kidnapped and killed. And the morgue isn't the only place in Baghdad ruled by the Mahdi army. Our Iraqi colleague has come to see a Sunni group called the Association of Muslim Scholars. People bring their problems here because they don't trust the police. And the most common problem is a Shia militia group called the Mahdi Army. Hamid is a Sunni living in a mixed area, but the Mahdi Army have given his family 2 days to leave their home or they'll be killed. It's a relative. There's a problem with the driver they've hired to go and collect the furniture from their house. The family's found a Shia driver, thinking he'll be allowed through, but the Mahdi army have threatened him.
يعني هو يقول لك اذا جيش الميت هناك يذبحون. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. تعرضوا للأذى.
They harm people, burn houses and threaten the citizens. But they always get through the checkpoints under the nose of the army and the police. That's why I say these violations take place with the blessing and the participation of the government. That's why we place responsibility on the government.
Another call, same problem. A woman asks the sheikh if he'll notify the Americans that her family has been attacked by the Mahdi army.
احنا ما نفاتح الامريكان بهذا الموضوع، احنا بالنسبه لنا نحل الموضوع بطريقه اخرى لا علاقه الامريكان بنا، لانه سبب المشاكل وسبب المصايب اللي حلت بنا هي سببها الامريكان.
The sheikh gave us dozens of videos. His association is logging all the crimes. Here, 36 Sunnis had been rounded up by the police for no obvious reason apart from living in a mixed neighborhood. They were found with their faces disfigured by acid.
صار اسبوع على اخوه من ذيك هذا الساعه بالثالثة ونص الفجر اخذوهم من البيت. شلون السيارات اللي اخذتهم؟ بهبهانات لابسين سراويل وقوات خاصه.
Killing doesn't seem to be enough. The death squads also want to terrify those left behind.
جبار مطلق احد الضحايا آثار تعذيب في الرأس في الجسد مكسرين الأسنان ضربات في كل مكان من الجسد الرأس محطمة الجمجمة العيون هم يعني العيون مفقوعة
He was among 14 farmers arrested, all Sunni, as a reprisal for a car bomb which had killed many Shia. This continuous cycle of sectarian violence now affects almost everyone you meet. We've just heard from one of the human rights people that we've been working with in Jordan. His family are still here in Baghdad, and this morning his brother was kidnapped. He was actually pulled off a bus by the Mahdi army, and they've told the family that they've taken him for interrogation. And that's really chilling, because usually in these cases the next thing the family hears is that a body's been found on the street. And you know, these kind of stories are now happening here almost every single day. For 3 agonizing days, the family negotiate with the kidnappers and eventually pay $15,000 ransom. He's released. We can't go and see him because militiamen are keeping watch on the house, so the family email us these pictures. He's described how he was handcuffed and then hung from a door frame so that his shoulders were almost ripped out of their sockets, and he says the handcuffs cut right through to the bones, and he can't walk because he was beaten so badly on the legs with an iron bar. It's really a mark of how desperate things are in this town, that a man who's been dreadfully tortured but not actually killed feels like a good news story. The random violence consuming this city doesn't surprise Douglas Brand. The former Deputy Chief Constable of South Yorkshire was seconded to Baghdad after the invasion and given the epic task of rebuilding a professional police force. But the Americans didn't mind the number of militiamen signing up.
Whole groups were enlisted into the police, and they wanted to have the graduation parades, to have them in new uniforms, put them out, and nobody was too interested about what happened when they actually went out there.
Did you voice those concerns?
I would say probably 10 times a day.
To whom? At what levels?
To whoever would listen, usually 2-star generals and above. I did have the opportunity on one occasion to raise it with Donald Rumsfeld when he visited, but I sensed that the subtleties were not understood, and that so if there were consequences down the road, well, that was part of building a democracy, and that's something that the Iraqis would have to handle themselves.
From the beginning, there's been a willingness to turn a blind eye to how the police are operating. 2 years ago, when the first commando units were being set up, Kevin Maries was a sniper based inside the Ministry of the Interior.
The MOI was an 11-story building, kind of rectangular in shape. We had observation posts on the east and west side in the upper floors.
He took pictures through his telescopic sight as the police brought prisoners into a ministry compound below him.
They were forced onto their knees. Their shirts were stripped off their back. At first they were just beaten with rubber hoses. There were sometimes as many as 2 or 3 individuals that were beating the one bound and blindfolded prisoner. As time progressed and they worked their way through people, the beatings got more severe. At one point, a metal bar was used. They were tying their feet and elevating them and then beating the soles of their feet.
Kevin alerted his unit and troops arrived to stop the torture. But after an hour, US headquarters ordered them to withdraw. Most prisoners were later transferred to proper jails, but not before they were beaten again.
When we returned to the patrol base, there was a general order, a generalized order not to speak of the incident.
Since then, those kind of incidents have simply got worse. Our Iraqi colleague has tracked down a woman who witnessed the death squads in action last July. Her family is now in hiding in a school because they're so scared of reprisals. Fatima saw the police setting up roadblocks in the mixed jihad area. Masked gunmen then checked people's ID cards, and those with Sunni names were executed on the spot.
Yes, there were policemen there, but they didn't have any authority. I saw them watching while the militias were killing people, but they didn't do anything. It was like a horror film.
Last year, her husband died in a car bomb left by Sunni insurgents. Now Shia death squads have driven them from their home. It shows how little the Americans really control the security situation.
I'm Alex Thompson in Afghanistan. 5 years on from America's invasion, what's gone wrong? British troops overstretched and under fire. Hundreds of schools closed by a resurgent Taliban. The opium trade booming. Join me from Monday for a week of news from Afghanistan.
The American military are taking us to a press conference to talk about how they're tackling the sectarian violence that's engulfing Baghdad. It's only a couple of miles away, but we're taken by helicopter because the streets aren't safe. We land at an Iraqi army base in a district called Adamiyah. In August, the Iraqis began a joint operation with the Americans to tackle the death squads.
As you know, Operation Together Forward continues to focus on key hotspots in Baghdad. In this operation, we searched over 36,000 buildings. 23 mosques were permissively searched by Iraqi security forces. We also confiscated weapons, discovered 5 caches, and had detainees as well.
But if Iraqi security forces, which include the police, are part of the problem, then this whole operation is doomed. Colonel Shields, some of the death squads, the militias, clearly believe that they can operate almost with impunity because they clearly think that in some way they've got support from the Iraqi police, particularly the national police, and possibly even up to ministerial level. How are you tackling that?
That could be a challenge. I think that's a concern amongst the people. I mean, we hear it as we walk the streets, concern about militia infiltration of Iraqi security forces, and that's a challenge that leaders have to face, and they are facing that, and they're working that.
But since then, the Americans have announced the operation's been a failure. The level of violence in Baghdad has gone up, not down, as both Sunni and Shia fight for control of the city. It's a continuous round of sectarian killing, each attack bringing ever more horrific reprisals. A bomb has exploded in a district called Sadr City. A local cameraman gave us this footage. People were queuing for cooking oil. About 40 are dead, targeted simply because, like everyone in this area, they're Shia. That means the bombers were Sunni insurgents. It also means the Shia death squads will take their revenge. When things calmed down, we asked another Shia cameraman to film ordinary street scenes. But this is the Mahdi army's heartland. He can only continue when he shows written permission from their boss, Muqtada al-Sadr. The cleric, Muqtada al-Sadr, is omnipresent here, just as Saddam was when this area was called Saddam City before the invasion. Members of the al-Sadr family were murdered by the old Sunni regime. But in this new Iraq, the Shia, who are 60% of the population, are tasting power for the first time. A key ally of Muqtada is the health minister, and so many of Muqtada's men, his Mahdi army, are officially employed to guard the hospitals. They've become very dangerous places. One of the videos we were given showed what happened to 10 Sunnis who visited a relative in hospital. The police locked them in a freight container.
There was no air at all. Everyone was begging everyone else not to breathe too much. Then we all began to lose consciousness and I blacked out. I only woke up that night when someone splashed water on my face. We were all rushed to Al Yarmouk hospital, but all the others were already dead. Only I was still alive, thanks to God.
We've been in touch with an Iraqi doctors' organisation to see if they can find anyone who'll talk to us about what's happening in the hospitals. And we've just had 2 heartbreaking emails back. The first is from a doctor who says he can't take the risk because he's got 2 young children. And I'm going to read you what he goes on to say. He says, "I never in my life felt so frightened. I'm writing to you crying with tears. They've gone on a wild rampage now, killing doctors. A professor, a good colleague, was killed yesterday. Only a week ago, another consultant was kidnapped from the car park, not far from the hospital guards, tortured and killed." And another doctor, a woman, wrote to us, "Thanks for this great offer to unveil the truth, but I can't take this risk. These religious fanatics are killing and driving the educated people out of the country, so it will be easier to be controlled. All women professors in Baghdad Medical College have been threatened to leave the country or they would be killed." This is the one issue doctors are terrified to talk about. Eventually, we find someone who's still too scared to be identified. He described how Muqtada followers ran his hospital.
يعني عند اللحظة إن كان دخل مثلا مريض أو مجروح من منطقة معينة.
If an ill or wounded person comes into hospital from a given region, depending on their identity card, they're kidnapped with the aid of the hospital guards and taken away. Later their body is found dumped on a rubbish tip somewhere.
ودخلت إلى طوارئ أحد المستشفيات يعني اللي معروفة بهذا العمل.
Once there was an older ill woman. She had either high blood pressure or diabetes. She was rushed into the hospital, which was well known for treating these things. In the ER, once it became known she was someone's wife, a sheikh who headed a tribe, a member of the hospital guards killed her on the spot. In another incident, 2 brothers with typically Sunni names walked into the hospital. They were both killed in the ER. This incident made not just Sunni, but also Shia doctors actually run away.
We wanted to put all these allegations to Muqtada al-Sadr, but he doesn't speak to Western journalists. His spokesman is Baha al-Araji, and he has a standard answer to all the allegations about the Mahdi army, the Jaish al-Mahdi. Sunni families are being told by the Jaish al-Mahdi, you must leave your homes, and unless you do so, you will be killed. Why is that happening?
Many gangs and groups are working for foreign intelligence agencies in Iraq, and they try to blame it on the Mahdi army, which is false and has no basis.
But the stories are absolutely consistent. Every single day we hear it is the Jaish al-Mahdi. They kidnap people, they torture people, they kill people. They say to people, they tell people who they are. They turn up in uniforms, they turn up with their guns. There's no question that they are the Jaish al-Mahdi doing this.
The fact that they wear uniforms doesn't mean they are the Mahdi army. Everyone knows that criminals don't reveal their true identity.
Next week, the UN will announce how many Iraqi civilians were killed in the last 2 months. No one expects things will have got any better. October was also the worst month for American casualties in 2 years, and that's only increased the pressure on George Bush to pull the troops out. But the price for an early withdrawal is leaving the future of Iraq to be shaped by those who put religious division above national unity. It would mean those who stand accused of supporting and running the death squads would then be running Iraq.